If you ever want to know what real terror feels like, don't imagine ghosts, monsters, or dark alleys. Imagine waking up inside your own body and realizing you can't move a single muscle, not your fingers, not your lips, not even the tears gathering in your eyes. Imagine lying there while the man who promised to love you until his last breath leans over your motionless body and whispers to another woman, once she's gone, everything will fall into place. That was the moment my world split open. My name is Asha Sharma, and before that night, I thought I understood pain, a scraped knee, a harsh word, a fight with a loved one. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the horror of being fully awake inside a body that had become my prison. The room was cold, the disinfectant smell sharp, the ventilator humming like a distant warning I couldn't escape from. I could hear every word, every breath, every sigh of impatience from him. And then her voice soft, sugary, dripping with excitement. Kabir, how long until we're free? Free. As if my death were a doorway. As if my existence were an inconvenience. Those words sliced into me sharper than any blade ever could. And in that moment, lying helpless on that hospital bed in Jaipur, I understood something women across centuries had whispered to one another. The person who destroys you is rarely the stranger at your door. It's the one sleeping beside you. If you're listening right now, tell me this. What would you do if the man who should protect you was the one planning your end? Comment below. I want to know if anyone else has ever felt this kind of fear. The fear of realizing the greatest danger in your life comes from the person you trusted the most. Because if you stay with me, you'll learn that my story didn't begin with betrayal. It began with love, or at least what I thought love was. People say every storm gives a warning before it hits. But in my life, the sky looked painfully clear. Before everything shattered, my world felt simple, predictable, almost sweet in its ordinariness. I used to wake early in our little Jaipur home, the one with peeling yellow paint and the marigold garland drying above the main door. The street vendors outside would shout, "Doodh, tamatar, dhania," and somehow those sounds always made me feel safe. I was a primary school teacher, the kind who carries colorful stickers in her bag and remembers which child likes to hide behind the water cooler when nervous. And Kabir was the kind of husband other women in the neighborhood praised endlessly. "Asha, you're so lucky," they would say. "Your husband speaks so gently, always smiling, always polite." And he was, or at least he looked like it. He brought me chai every morning. He asked about my day even when he looked exhausted. He insisted on walking me to the school gate whenever he had time. I thought that was love. I truly did. Even my mother-in-law, Kusum, though strict, treated me with calm respect. Not affectionate, not warm, but in an Indian household, respect itself feels like a blessing. Our evenings were quiet. Kabir reading the newspaper. Me preparing roti and sabzi, humming old Lata Mangeshkar songs. The kitchen smelling of jeera, tempering in hot ghee. Neighbors laughing outside. Our ceiling fan clicking the same familiar click every night. For a long time, I believed this was what a peaceful marriage looked like. Routine, quiet, nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Just two people living side by side, building a life together, one ordinary day at a time. Sometimes I look back and wonder, was it really happiness? Or was I simply too naive to see the cracks forming beneath my own feet? Because slowly, so slowly, I didn't even realize it. Kabir began slipping away from me. A missed dinner here, a forgotten promise there, a silence that stretched longer than it should. But in those early days, I told myself he was tired, busy, stressed. Isn't that what every wife tells herself when her heart whispers something she doesn't want to hear? Looking back now, I can see the truth. Peace is sometimes the quietest disguise for danger. But back then, I held onto the illusion with both hands, with all my hope, with the foolish belief that love alone could hold a marriage together. If you're listening to this and you've ever ignored your instincts, tell me in the comments. Sometimes we don't hear the warning signs because we're too desperate to believe everything is fine. Little did I know, my storm was already on its way. People think big betrayals arrive like thunderstorms, loud, violent, impossible to ignore. But the truth is, sometimes they come quietly, like a soft knock on the door you're too tired to open. The first red flag in my marriage arrived that way. It started with Kabir's eyes, or rather, the way they didn't meet mine anymore. He began returning home later than usual. Not scandalously late, just late enough for me to wonder where he had been, but not late enough for me to feel justified asking. His shirt sometimes carried a faint perfume, a scent too floral, too sharp, too unfamiliar to belong to me. I remember one evening when I touched his arm and said, "Kabir, you smell different today." He didn't flinch, didn't panic. He simply smiled and replied, "Asha, it must be from the office. You worry too much." Simple, smooth, practiced. Another red flag arrived 2 weeks later. His phone, once left anywhere around the house, suddenly became something he guarded like a treasure. Always face down, always on silent, always locked. Once, when a message popped up, he grabbed the phone so quickly that the plate of dal in front of him shook. "Work," he said. Always work. Apparently, his office ran 24 hours now. And then came the whispers in the house. Changes too subtle for anyone else to notice, but loud enough for a wife's heart to hear. My mother-in-law, Kusum, who once treated me with measured respect, started walking past me without acknowledgement. No good morning, no chai preferences asked, just stiff silence, like she knew something I didn't. And in the kitchen, I started noticing 2 teacups in the sink. On mornings when only one should have been used, a spoon moved, a chair pulled back slightly, the shadow of footsteps that didn't match Kabir's routine. One afternoon, returning early from school due to a staff meeting cancellation, I saw a dupatta, light pink, sequined, hastily stuffed behind the shoe rack. Not mine, not belonging to anyone in the house. When I asked Kabir that evening, he barely looked up from his phone. Must be the neighbor's child. Kids throw things everywhere. A lie so casual, it chilled me more than a direct confrontation ever could. But the biggest warning, the one I still feel in my bones, came at night. Kabir was asleep beside me, but he whispered another woman's name in his dreams. So soft, so tender, a way he hadn't spoken to me in months. I lay there frozen tears, soaking the pillow, wondering, when did I lose him? Or had he never been mine at all? If you're listening to this, tell me honestly, have you ever ignored a red flag because the truth felt too heavy to carry? Comment below. Your story might help another woman recognize hers. Back then, I convinced myself these were small things, coincidences, mistaken impressions of an overthinking wife. But what I didn't know was this. These were not the storm. They were only the wind, whispering that a hurricane was coming. Some moments don't just change your life, they split it into two halves, before it happened and after everything burned. For me, that moment came on a Thursday evening, just as the sun dipped behind the old apartment blocks of Jaipur and the sky turned a bruised shade of purple. I remember I was riding my scooter home from school, still replaying the strange feeling I had that morning, when Kabir left without looking at my face. My chest felt heavy, like something was trying to warn me. But as always, I pushed the thought away. Halfway through the main road near Bapu Bazaar, a white car appeared behind me. Too close, too fast. At first, I thought the driver was careless. Then the car accelerated. Before I could process anything, I felt a violent hit from behind, a shock wave ripping through my body. My scooter skidded. The world spun. Concrete rushed toward my face. Then, nothing. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't on the road anymore. I was in a hospital bed, straps across my arms, a tube in my throat, machines beeping like they were counting down to something. I tried to move my fingers. Nothing. Tried to speak. Nothing. My body refused every command. That was when the real nightmare began. I heard footsteps, two sets enter the room. Kabir's voice floated into my ears, warm, smooth, calm, too calm. "She won't wake up," he whispered. "It's better this way." My heart froze. My blood turned cold, heavier than stone. And then a woman's voice, the same soft tone I had imagined 100 times. The voice that fit perfectly with the perfume on his shirt. "Kabir, are you sure?" she asked. "If she recovers, we'll be ruined." Kabir sighed. A sigh I used to think meant love. Now I realized it meant relief. "She won't survive this," he said. "Once she's gone, everything finally falls into place." Gone. Everything falls into place. My death was their plan, their convenience, their escape. I wanted to scream his name. I wanted to sit up, claw the oxygen mask off, grab his collar and ask, "Why? Why wasn't I enough? How long had you been waiting for me to disappear?" But I was trapped inside a body that refused to move, a prisoner in my own skin. A tear slipped from the corner of my eye. Just one, but it was enough to remind me I was alive, I was conscious, I was not done. If you're listening to this, tell me, what hurts more? The accident itself, or waking up to realize the person who should have protected you was the one who wanted you gone? Comment below. Your voice might give strength to someone who needs it. Back then, I still didn't know the worst part. I didn't know the accident was not an accident at all. And the people standing beside my bed were not visitors. They were architects of my destruction. People think the lowest point of a person's life is when they lose everything. But that's not true. The lowest point is when you realize you still have a heartbeat, still have a mind, still have a soul screaming for help, yet the world looks at you as if you're already dead. That was my life in the days after the accident. I could hear everything, feel everything, understand every word around me, but I could not move, not talk, not defend myself. I was a living body trapped inside silence. Doctors called it temporary paralysis. Kabir called it God's will. And his mother, Kusum, stood by my bed every day, clutching her prayer beads, whispering, "Maybe the poor girl will finally find peace." Peace. They used that word so easily, as if my death was an act of kindness. The nurses checked my pulse. The machines checked my oxygen levels. But no one checked the truth hiding behind my eyes. except I couldn't tell them. Not yet. Every time Kabir entered the room, the atmosphere changed, like darkness slipping through a half open door. His voice would suddenly soften. He would stroke my hair with fake devotion and say things like, I just want her to be comfortable. She wouldn't want to suffer. We must accept fate. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching the world believe him. Relatives came to visit and praised him. Kabir Beta, you're such a devoted husband. May God give you strength in this difficult time. Some even cried for me, not knowing I was silently crying for myself. And then came the moment that truly broke me. One afternoon, Kabir brought in a doctor I had never seen before. A man with cold eyes and a clipped tone. Kabir spoke quietly. Is there a painless way to let her go? She's suffering. My blood ran cold. If my heart could have stopped beating from fear, it would have. The doctor replied, these decisions require signatures, family approval. We can discuss options. Options. As if I were a document, a chore, a problem to be solved. Kabir nodded calmly, as if planning my funeral was just another errand on his to-do list. Inside my paralyzed body, I screamed until my soul felt like tearing apart, but not a sound came out, not even a breath different from the machine's rhythm. I was a woman branded as helpless, surrounded by people ready to bury me. While I was still alive, if you're listening to this, answer me honestly. What scares you more? Death or being alive in a world where no one believes your life matters? Comment below. Your voice might become the strength someone else desperately needs. Back then, I thought I had reached the bottom, but the truth was far darker. I had not reached the end of the tunnel. I had only reached the point where the light disappeared completely. Every story of survival has a moment when one small light breaks through the darkness. For me, that light came in the form of a young nurse named Priya. She wasn't extraordinary at first glance, just a slim girl with tired eyes, a neatly tied braid, and a habit of humming old Bollywood songs while adjusting IV drips. But in a world where everyone saw me as a body waiting to die, she was the only one who looked at me as if I was still alive. The first time she noticed something was wrong was subtle. While checking my vitals, she whispered, "Your eyelids flickered. Was that the light?" It was the first time in days someone spoke to me like I could hear them. I tried again, pushing every ounce of strength into my body. My eyelids flickered a second time. Priya froze. Then she leaned closer, her voice trembling slightly. "If you can hear me, blink twice." I gathered the strength of a drowning woman reaching for air. One blink, two. Priya gasped. Not loudly, but the kind of gasp that comes when a miracle touches your fingertips. "Oh my God, you're conscious," she whispered. "You're in there, you're really in there." For the first time since the accident, someone finally saw me. Priya didn't panic. She didn't run to tell the others. Instead, she quietly closed the blinds, checked the hallway, and pulled a chair beside my bed. "Listen carefully," she whispered. "You're in danger. I don't know everything yet, but your husband and that woman, I've seen them talking. Too quietly, too often." The terror inside me swelled, but so did something else. "Hope?" Priya continued. "I'll protect you, but you cannot react when he's around, not even a blink. If he realizes you're conscious, he will act before we can stop him." She explained that she had already grown suspicious. Kabir visited at odd intervals. He hovered around my IV lines too often. He whispered in corners where staff weren't supposed to stand. And the woman with the pink dupatta had tried entering my room twice when no doctors were present. So I installed a small camera. Priya said, lowering her voice further. I told the staff it was for monitoring your condition. But really, I needed to know what they were doing. I wanted to cry, not from pain, but because, for the first time, someone was fighting for me. Priya held my hand gently, as if to anchor me back into life. You survived that accident for a reason. Stay alive. Don't give up. I promise I will help you expose them. Her words were not loud. They didn't echo like Kabir's cold whispers. But they were the first words that made me believe I had a chance. If you're listening to this, tell me, have you ever been saved by someone the world overlooks? Someone who saw your pain before you could speak it? Comment below. Your story might be the lifeline another woman is waiting for. Back then, I didn't know just how much Priya would uncover, or how dangerous the truth really was. Truth doesn't always arrive like a confession. Sometimes it comes quietly, piece by piece, like a trail of broken glass leading you toward the real monster. For me, the truth arrived through a tiny camera lens and the courage of one woman who refused to look away. Priya began her investigation silently. She didn't trust anyone, not even the senior nurses. She watched Kabir's movements, the timing of his visits, the way his eyes darted around the room as if searching for blind spots. And the camera, no bigger than a shirt button, captured everything. The first recording showed Kabir entering my room late at night. When visiting hours were over, he looked around, locked the door, then leaned over my bed with a face that held no grief at all. She's barely holding on, he whispered. Maybe tonight we can finish what we started. Finish what we started. Those words struck me like a physical blow. The next clip was worse. The woman with the pink dupatta entered the room, pulling her scarf low to hide her face. Her voice, unmistakable and sickeningly sweet, filled the room. Kabir, the doctor said, she might survive. Are you sure the dosage is enough? Kabir answered, trust me, I've been adjusting it every day. She won't wake up. Adjusting every day. My IV, my medication. I wanted to scream, to tear the tubes out, to run far from that hospital. But I was trapped inside my frozen body, forced to listen to my own murder being planned inches from my face. Priya almost cried watching the footage. But she didn't break. She saved every clip, labeled each file, and took notes of their conversations like a detective assembling a case. Then came the recording that changed everything. Kabir stood beside my bed, holding a small vial between his fingers. His voice was careful, controlled like someone reciting a rehearsed script. One more dose, he said. After this, there will be no turning back. The woman replied, good, I'm tired of hiding. Your mother supports us too. Once she's gone, we can start fresh. My mother-in-law, the woman who prayed for my peace, she was part of it. The ground inside me shattered again. Priya stopped the recording and looked at me with fierce determination. Asha, this is attempted murder. We have proof now, enough to expose them. But she knew we needed something more, a moment where they incriminated themselves beyond denial, a final piece that would corner them completely. So she set a trap. The next day, she purposely adjusted my medical chart to make it appear as if my condition was improving. She knew Kabir would panic. She knew he would rush in to fix it. And he did. That night, he stormed into the room, breathing hard, muttering, this cannot be happening. She cannot wake up now. Priya watched from the hallway, the camera recording through the slightly open blinds. Kabir reached for my IV line, and then he said the sentence that sealed his fate. If she survives, everything we've done is for nothing. The truth wasn't just visible, It was undeniable. If you're listening, tell me, have you ever seen someone's mask fall off so completely that you finally saw the stranger hiding beneath? Comment below, because the next part of my story is when we stopped gathering evidence and started the confrontation. There comes a moment in every story of survival when fear turns into fire. For me, that moment arrived the night Priya decided. It was time to end the silence. The trap had been set. The camera was rolling. The blinds were slightly open, just enough for the truth to walk in on its own. My chart showed unexpected improvement. My vitals appeared stronger, and as Priya predicted, panic drove Kabir like a man losing control of a secret he had buried too shallow. He stormed into the room, his footsteps sharp and fast. He didn't bother greeting the nurse on duty. He didn't even look around carefully this time. He was too rattled. "This cannot be real," he muttered. "She cannot be waking up now." He approached the IV line, shaking slightly, fear crawling beneath his skin. In that moment, I lay still. Not because I was helpless, but because stillness had become my weapon. Kabir bent forward, fingers reaching for the tube, and then the door swung open. Priya stepped inside, her voice steady as steel. "Mr. Kabir, what exactly are you doing?" Kabir jumped, startled. What are you doing here?" "I should be asking you," Priya replied, crossing her arms. "Why are you touching the patient's medical lines without authorization?" Kabir's face twisted. He forced a shaky smile. I was just checking on my wife." "Really?" Priya's voice cut through the room. "Because the CCTV we installed shows something very different." Kabir froze. The woman with the pink dupatta suddenly appeared behind him, as if she'd been waiting in the hallway. Her eyes widened when she saw Priya. "This is not what it looks like," she snapped. Priya stepped closer. "Oh, it is exactly what it looks like. And the police are on their way." Kabir lunged toward the door, but Priya blocked him. "You're not going anywhere." Then came the moment that shattered everything. From the hallway outside, a calm, authoritative voice said, "Mr. Kabir Singh, please step aside." Two police officers entered the room. Kabir's mask finally fell apart. He pointed at me at my unmoving body and shouted, "She was supposed to die. She was supposed to." The officers grabbed him before he could finish. The woman with the pink dupatta tried to flee, but another officer caught her arm. Priya looked directly at Kabir, her voice cold. "You almost got away with it, but you underestimated the wrong woman." Her hand touched mine gently, a silent signal that the nightmare was turning. And then, for the first time since the accident, I let myself blink, deliberately, slowly, clearly. Kabir's eyes widened in horror as he saw it. She's awake," he choked. Priya smiled, not cruelly, just triumphantly. "Yes," she said, "she's been awake, and now she's finally safe." If you're listening to this, tell me, have you ever witnessed justice begin in a single moment, like a storm breaking open the sky? Comment below. Because what happened next was not revenge. It was justice. Justice doesn't always roar like thunder. Sometimes it walks in quietly, step by step, tearing down every lie a person has ever built. For Kabir, justice arrived in handcuffs. The moment the police led him out of my hospital room, the air shifted. It felt as though the weight pressing on my chest for months finally cracked and loosened. But justice, real justice, is not only the arrest. It is everything that happens after the mask falls. Kabir was interrogated for hours. With the camera footage, the audio, the witnesses, and Priya's testimony, there was nowhere left for him to hide. He tried to blame the woman with the pink dupatta. He tried to blame his mother. He even tried to blame stress, fate, God, anything. But each lie dug his grave deeper. The woman with the pink dupatta confessed first. Under pressure, her voice trembled as she admitted. He said once his wife was gone, he'd marry me. He said we would start a new life. Her confession was the nail in the coffin. When the police questioned my mother-in-law, Kusum, she broke down completely. The facade of a praying, grieving elder vanished. She admitted she knew everything and had chosen silence over saving me. Her silence became part of the crime. Meanwhile, I was moved to a private recovery room with guards stationed outside. For the first time in months, I slept without fear of someone standing over me in the dark, waiting for my heartbeat to stop. Doctors began treatment to reverse the effects of the medication Kabir had tampered with. My body was weak, but my will to live was stronger than it had ever been. News spread quickly. Neighbors whispered in shock. Kabir, that respectful man, he tried to kill his own wife and his mother helped him. People who once praised him now recoiled from his name like it was poison. Even his own relatives refused to defend him. Some visited me, tears in their eyes, saying, "We never knew. If we had seen any sign, we would have helped." But the truth was simple. Evil hides well behind gentle smiles. Kabir was charged with attempted murder, medical tampering, and conspiracy. The court denied him bail. He was taken into custody, while the woman with the pink dupatta faced charges for aiding the crime. As for Kusum, she was not jailed, but the entire community condemned her. No temple welcomed her prayers, no neighbor greeted her. Silence became the punishment she could never escape. And strangely, that silence hurt her more than any sentence the court could give. Justice, I realized, is not always loud. Sometimes justice is the moment a whole community turns its back on the people who tried to destroy you. If you're listening, tell me, have you ever watched someone who wronged you finally face the consequences of their own choices? Comment below, because the final part of my story is not about him. It's about how I rebuilt myself. Healing is not a straight road. It doesn't begin the moment your abuser is arrested. And it doesn't magically appear just because justice has been served. Healing begins the first time you look at yourself and realize you are no longer surviving for someone else. You are living for you. For me, that moment came slowly, like morning light creeping into a dark room that had forgotten the sun. After Kabir's arrest, I remained in the hospital for weeks. My body was fragile, trembling at the simplest movements. My muscles refused to cooperate. Every breath felt borrowed. But for the first time in a long time, the fear was gone. Every morning, when I opened my eyes, I didn't wonder if someone was waiting to silence me. I didn't fear the shadow by the door. I didn't dread the sound of footsteps approaching my bed. I was safe. Priya visited me daily. She brought flowers, ladoos, stories from her childhood, anything to make the room feel less like a battlefield and more like a place where life could grow again. One evening, she sat beside me and said, "You know, Asha, you didn't just survive. You fought. Even when you couldn't move, you fought." Her words broke something open inside me. For the first time, I cried, not from fear, not from pain, but from relief. When I was finally discharged, I didn't return to Kabir's house. I didn't step back into a doorway soaked in betrayal. I moved to Udaipur to live with my elder sister, Meera. Her home smelled of sandalwood and warm chapatis, a place untouched by lies. She rebuilt my days slowly, teaching me how to breathe again, how to walk again, how to live without looking over my shoulder. I returned to teaching months later. The first day I stepped into my classroom, the children ran to me with drawings, questions, laughter. Their tiny hands pulled me back into the world. For the first time, I felt whole again. I started therapy. I joined a support group for women who had survived domestic violence. Each story reminded me I was not alone and I was not weak. Kabir had tried to erase me, but instead, he became the reason I rebuilt myself stronger. His absence became my freedom. His betrayal became my rebirth. One afternoon, standing by Lake Pichola, watching the golden reflections ripple across the water, I whispered to myself, I'm alive, not because they let me live, but because I refuse to die. If you're listening to this, remember something important. Your worth is not decided by the person who tried to break you. Your life does not end where someone else tried to bury you. And sometimes, the strongest version of you is the one that rises from the ashes with quiet dignity instead of rage. Comment below if you've ever had to rebuild yourself after someone shattered your trust. Because the final chapter of my story belongs not to my pain, but to my strength. In the end, my story is not about the man who tried to break me. It is about the woman who refused to stay broken. I once believed that love meant surrender, silence, sacrifice. Now I know love begins with choosing yourself, even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. If you are listening to this today, remember one thing. The darkest chapters of your life are not the end of your story. They are the turning points. And sometimes surviving is the most powerful victory of all. Tell me in the comments which part of my journey stayed with you the most. Your words might become the strength another woman needs tonight. Because every voice matters, especially the ones that once trembled.